One couple in particular stands out in my mind that I worked with a number of years ago and left a lasting impression on me as not only someone who experienced divorce, but also working as a mediator. This couple had 3 young children, and they came into the mediation process after having tried to figure things out on their own, and it hadn't gone well for them. And as much as they both wanted very much to try to make the process amicable for their kids, it didn't turn out that way. It had turned into something quite different, sadly. And the day that they came in and met with me initially, it was a very tense encounter, although it was cordial, and they were very interested in what mediation had to offer, but you could have cut the tension with a knife. Ultimately, they decided that they did want to give mediation a try. And so we began our work together. And it was incredible to see how much distance there was between this couple. And in the first session, the very first meeting that we had, after a few minutes, they could not even sit at my conference room table together with me. And so I moved over to something that's called shuttle diplomacy and caucusing mediation, and decided to help put a little distance between them. And over the coming sessions, me going back and forth between them and, carrying information back and forth, they eventually decided they wanted to try to come back to the table together. And over time, the thing that I think helped them the most was being able to change the way they communicated with one another. They had fallen into this pattern unconsciously of talking but not listening, and no one was feeling validated. No one was feeling heard. And one of the things that I put focus on with all of my clients is communication, because what we are saying is not necessarily what the other person is hearing. And so after a period of time of helping them reframe the way they were putting their feelings out there, or the way they were asking questions, or even the way they were negotiating certain aspects of their divorce, there was a subtle change that started to happen. And we got through mediation. And I really held my breath for this couple. And I was very heavily invested in them because they had 3 really small kids. When they came back to pick up their agreement, they came in with their 3 children. And they were an entirely different couple than the couple that had walked through my door months earlier. And they were smiling, and the kids were just kind of running around my reception area. And also, I have 2 dogs, so they were playing with my dogs. It was a very different experience than when they had come in. But the thing that stuck with me the most is they shook my hand and they thanked me. And the husband said to me, "After we leave here, we're taking our children to lunch." Aww. And it was amazing. And a very heartfelt moment, because I saw the power of how a very thoughtful, neutral, nurturing environment that is focused on a family, because families just change dynamics in a divorce. But seeing that really showed me how much positivity can impact so many people's lives. And that's what makes me get up and be able to go in and do a mediator every day.
Well, hello, this is Don and Gina with Focused Healthy Family, and this is podcast number 24. And today we're talking with Lori Grover with Rhode Island Divorce Mediation Center in Cranston, Rhode Island. And we're talking about dealing with divorce, as she states it, in a sensible, fair, and respectable way. But before we get into that, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. Or you can find a link on the front page of the focusedhealthyfamily.com website.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
And we're back. So today's podcast, again, we're talking with Lori Grover with Rhode Island Divorce Mediation Center. And Lori, along with her husband, have co-founded this practice. Plus, they also co-founded Academy of Professional Family Mediators. And so we're going to talk about divorce and mediation today. And we welcome you, Lori. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It is great to be with you both.
And I really appreciate your story. I got goosebumps, as you're talking about this couple that came to you. And it just, the tension I can imagine that they were going through with the divorce and the fact that they were able to totally turn around how they did things. It's powerful.
And it sparked a thought in me, a question in me, and we're going to talk about your story and all and what you do. But have you, in mediation, have you ever been able to turn a couple around and they don't get divorced? I'm just kind of curious.
I don't like to promote myself as any type of a marriage reconciler, but to be honest, I have to say, actually, yes.
That has happened.
And it's along the same lines of the shift of what I was discussing,
Exactly.
the couple.
Mm-hmm.
It was a change in the communication. These people, these couples, these human beings actually felt heard for the first time. And albeit small numbers, there actually have been some couples that have picked up their final agreement and said, thank you, but we're putting the divorce on hold.
That's neat. The story just kind of led to that thought.
We do communication workshops with parents aiming towards how they communicate with their kids, but it also has an effect of how they're communicating with their spouse. Yeah. And it's so true. It's still a family, even if mom and dad don't live together, it's still, like you said, a different dynamic of it. So that's wonderful.
So I guess now what I would say is, one, tell what mediation is, but then I'd like to hear your story of how you got into it and why you do what you do so wonderfully.
Well, thank you. Mediators are very different than the process of going out and hiring 2 separate attorneys. That is a system that I think became a societal norm for a long time. It's just what we became accustomed to. That was what we did. You're getting divorced, you hire an attorney. Things have changed quite a bit. I've been in private practice for 17 years, and I have seen a tremendous shift and a flip of the number of people that use mediation as opposed to hiring lawyers. And I think people understand a couple of things. They understand the value of holding on to their money a little bit more and not having that expended through a long, protracted, legal battle. And I also think they understand the value of the relationship piece, especially the parents. Mm-hmm. And that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. They win. Couples win in that case. So mediators, where attorneys have an obligation to advocate for their client, usually it's at the expense of one another when the parties get into a court situation. Mediators are actually working with both parties. And so where the law looks to, possibly look for fault or blame or create a winner and a loser, mediators have a very different job and mindset. They're looking for the unity. They're looking for the peaceful resolutions. They're looking for the couple to be able to come together and constructively map out what their settlement looks like and also what their futures look like. So there isn't any, taking sides. Mediator works for both parties and the entire family.
Why? What made you decide
Or
to get into it?
how did you get into the work that you do?
So I guess there's a number of pieces to this story. I am the child of parents who probably should have divorced but never did.
Okay.
Okay.
And we set that aside. But then I also wound up getting divorced back in the mid 90s. And that at that time, mediation did not exist here in Rhode Island.
Okay.
And so I went out and did what everybody else did. Even though I did want to keep it amicable, I had a daughter who was 8 at the time. My goal was to make sure that she was able to maintain healthy relationships with both of us.
Mhm.
And to a degree, my mindset was I just wanted it over with. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to that. You just want it over with, even though it was not an abusive, we just kind of grew apart. We had very different places we were coming from. I just wanted it over with. So and going into it naive, I'd never been divorced before. So I thought my lawyer's going to handle everything. That was naive. And so it didn't turn out quite the way I had hoped. Not that it was awful, but it could have been a whole lot better. And financially, it took me close to 8 years to recover because of some of the mistakes we had. I should also say, part of the reason for that long recovery is because we had a business. And I guess I'll just say that the way it was set up for the business to be dissolved and things to be cleared up didn't exactly go the way it was supposed to. So my recovery process was far longer than it had to be. And I really wished that I had someone giving me better questions, guiding me more clearly, because me, like most people, the divorce advice that you get can be a little tainted, can be a little skewed, it can be biased. So I did not have that coach, if you will.
Mhm.
So I ended up getting on my feet, and I found myself in banking and finance for a number of years. And through that time period, I actually was having the amount of people that was finding me, I'll say it that way, they were finding me, were people that were either approaching divorce and had no idea what to do from a financial standpoint, or they'd been through divorce and were suffering from consequences like I had. So I was almost acting as a divorce coach. And I was dating who turned out to be my husband at the time. And he started to notice this pattern before I did. And he says, gee, you got an awful lot of people that, seem to be coming around you that, it's kind of like what you went through. And I was like, oh yeah. And he said, we definitely need to take this in a different direction. So at that point, I started somewhat of a coaching type of practice to work with people that were divorcing, to help them understand this is what you need to do to prepare going into a divorce situation. These are things you need to look at. Here's the information you need to gather and all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was working out really well. So I thought, great, I have found some place where my heart is. I'm doing good for people. It was all wonderful. But what started happening after a while was I'm helping folks create these financial settlement options.
Mm-hmm.
They're going back to their attorneys, but it was never going any further than that, because the feedback I was getting was, well, you can do better, and we don't want to do it that way. So I got a little deflated at that point, because these people that had invested with me time and effort to feel better about their futures, to look at their budgets and understand, kind of prepare for their future,
Mm-hmm.
they were leaving me, and then it was falling nowhere. So then my soon-to-be husband at the time said, okay, time to go to the next level. And he said to me, you need to become a mediator, which is something I had absolutely never thought of. And I just said, yeah, okay. I kind of brushed it off a little bit. But the idea kept gnawing away at the back of my head. And I finally, did a little more research, and I thought, what the heck? So I did it. I trained. I went to Lakewood College, trained, and became nationally certified. And here I am, 17 years later, working with simple divorces, more complex divorces, parenting plans, renegotiating things after divorce, in a way for people that is more thoughtful and lines up more with the needs and the dynamics of divorcing families today.
Well, and I noticed you were on the board of the National Parent Organization, which I've talked with Don Hubin from that.
Yes, again, fate, this time fate crossed my Facebook page when I saw that one of the states, so they had, the NPO had actually put up a post how one of the states had gotten an F in shared parenting.
Oh,
And so it caught my attention, clicked on the link and started reading it. It was, wow, this organization really has their act together. And then there was this little section that said, check, see how your state got graded. So I thought, oh, I have to go here. And so when I clicked on Rhode Island, it said, you have no state chapter.
oh.
And so, I brought that to my husband's attention, and he looked at me and he said, well, here you go again. And so I wound up reaching out to the NPO, and we talked for a while back and forth. And the state chapter of the National Parents Organization was born. And
Well,
here
they
we
share
are.
a lot of the principles of what you do. What they share a lot of what you believe in.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the sun, the moon, and the stars lining up, where it was somewhat on the heels of me actually just about to send my book to be published, and seemed like all these things were coming together at the same time. And I don't wait for the signs to really bowl me over anymore. I've kind of learned to look at them and say, oh, okay, I need to pay attention to that. But all kidding aside, the organization and the way it is structured and the way it functions, the work that it does, aligned very much with the kind of work that I try to do, because it isn't about mom's rights versus dad's rights. It's about parents and children. It's about relationships.
Mhm.
It's about bonding. It's about overall health. And it's about helping our children that go through an event like divorce thrive, not survive. And there is such a difference.
Yeah. We're doing a whole series on this. We interviewed a lawyer who does.
Yeah, I think I told you, Ashley Nicole Russell, which I think you're familiar with.
Yes.
And we hope to. I've been talking with Don Hubin about getting on, or somebody from that organization getting on.
And
So we've got, because I think this is a topic that we're not in touch with it. We don't know divorce.
Neither of us have divorced parents. We haven't, had a divorce ourselves. And yet, we have had single parents come to us wanting to work on workshops. There was somebody who reached out, but they didn't follow through, that had a, shared parenting, but they were not together as a couple. And so we want to hear from people like, I think you're serving as a mediator is even more powerful, because you've been through a divorce that didn't go the way, you would have liked, and things didn't turn out the way you liked. And so you can relate to it, right? Just like we can relate to our clients. We have kids with anxiety disorders, and we kind of focus on dealing with those extra challenges, and knowing that you can still parent effectively along with dealing with financial issues and other related things.
So maybe step us through kind of what happens in the process generally. I mean, that doesn't have to be too specific, I guess, whatever, but what happens, or what do they go through with you?
Preparation is a big part of it. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that most people going into a divorce make is, broadly speaking, it's really a lack of preparedness. I know that there's a lot of people out there like myself back in the 90s that said, I just want this over with. for whatever reason. And then you get into situations where you have one spouse that may have mental health issues or personality disorders and things that further complicate and make it difficult. But I think that the preparation aspect of it, which does not have to be long and arduous, but it does provide the entire foundation for what the process will be like, regardless of the path that's chosen and the outcome. So we do work to not only financially and practically prepare people to come into mediation, but in a way we prepare them a little bit emotionally, at the same time. So they understand these are the types of things that you're going to need to decide, and not all of them are mandated by the state, but they really affect the outcome, and they're going to affect your ability to not only recover and begin to rebuild your life, but how you co-parent, how you interact with one another. How are your children seeing this experience, right? Because it's all about the kids. And I think that the personalness of me experiencing the highs and lows of divorce and being on that roller coaster and realizing you could feel good about something one day and the next day you're scared and you don't know what's going to happen. I bring that to my practice because I lived it, not because, it was something I read in a book or whatever. I really understand what people are going through and how they're feeling. It's a very uncertain time. Because not only are they worried about their children, but they're worried about themselves. So, actually preparing them, we call it a pre-mediation session, but there's a lot of nurturing that goes on with the practical side of, doing business. But that really gets them in a good place to actually begin the mediation process. And we work through parenting plans to the degree that we need to. If there are mental health issues or other or high conflict situations, the parenting plans are much more detailed. Couples who are really getting along great, and I clearly can see they're there. Their parenting plans are a little bit less in depth and structured. I think that's what a lot of people embrace about the process, and what draws them to it is because it isn't like stepping into court where everyone is put in the same box. Mediation allows the parenting and the financial settlements to be individualized to that family. It's not every family, it's that family. Because every family dynamic is different. That means you're meeting the needs of the children. Some children adapt really well to divorce, some don't. You may have one child that does really well while their sibling may need more time. Parents can actually do this in a way for their kids that is thoughtful and caring and is going to help them transition in the best way possible. So we take them through with the thoughtfulness, and my husband and partner in crime here, if you will, Kevin has been through divorce too. He's a divorced dad with 2 daughters. So coming into our environment, they're met with parents first who have lived through the difficulties of not only co-parenting,
Right.
And that transition and the speed bumps that come along with that and blending families. But we went through it with our own children and learning what their needs are and learning how to read them. Parents who are not opposing one another have the ability to give to their children. They're also not emotionally drained. So they have the ability to give to one another, be more tolerant, be more patient. It's a win-win. It really is for everybody.
Sure. As you're talking about this, my brother's been divorced now for,
6 years?
15 years.
I was longer on that, but I'm way off.
And I'm, thinking back on it, I think he told me that they went to a mediator. And now I'm more curious. And things went very smoothly, at least from my experience observing them. They had a great agreement with the kids. They live in the same town. And the kids actually thrived after they were separated because of the tensions, I think, that were going on, before the divorce. And so now I'm more curious to talk to him about this. But it's like, okay, yeah, this does work. And just thinking about the legal system and how if you go in, with a lawyer and in the court system, it's designed to be us against them, like you said, and rather than a coming together and the shared wanting the best for everybody. So it just, to me, that whole mindset, they're already coming to you with a place of, yeah, I mean, have you dealt with people who've come in not so sure about using a mediator versus a lawyer? And
Oh, absolutely. I have also worked with numerous cases where they actually started out in the legal system and then walked away from it
okay,
because it was turning into something that they did not want to happen. Yeah.
Well, and do you have people that come back to you years later because it's not working? That they made an agreement, they made a plan, and maybe when they started dating, somebody else, then things didn't get as friendly. Have they come back to you for repairs, I guess, or yeah?
further negotiation?
Yes, they have. Ironically, I'm working with one of those couples right now. One of the things that I try to impress upon my clients is that even if they've been living separately for a little while and they're going to be co-parenting,
Mm-hmm.
the actual act of having that final agreement in place, going to court and having it finalized makes it real. It's one thing to live separately, but you're still married. Your finances are still mingled to some degree. But once the piece of paper is in your hand, it changes everything. And people are going to go on to get into new relationships. I tell them this. There's a 50% shot you're going to either get remarried or get into a relationship. You're going to change. Things are going to change. Your family dynamics are going to change. And most likely, what we're working on today, all of it isn't going to map over in even 2 years. And if people have really small kids, yeah, I mean, if you're working with a couple that has a 6-month-old, in 2 years, everything's entirely different. And so that does happen. So regardless of the best parenting plan that we can come up with, there's going to be changes. Now, I do try to prepare my clients with contingencies for certain things, but I also tell them, your first thought, if things are going kind of sideways, if you cannot find your way back, you might want to consider coming back, because that can help flesh it out. That can bring you back to that neutral place and space where the validation and the hearing one another happens again. And, as far as the success rate with that, it's the same as the success rate with mediation. I tell people, you are going to get out of this process exactly what you put into it. If you come into it and you're determined that regardless of how difficult or painful it might be, that you're going to get through it and you're going to make your best decisions, you will. Same thing applies after the fact. But I think that's a point where people are a little bit naive, because they think, well, we're just going to get divorced and this is going to be the way it is. And it's not, especially when new people come on the scene. And that's something that I'm actually working with a couple on right now. And funny, she said when the wife, the former wife, called me to schedule the mediation session, she said, "You told us this was going to happen."
And here they are.
So we knew we had to call you back.
And you didn't use a crystal ball to figure that out either. It was just,
No, it was in the shop, so I didn't have it that day. But because it really is just common sense. And I think the biggest thing going into a divorce that I wish I had realized, we just don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're able to find unbiased guidance that can give you just honest direction, give you some truths, not the person's truths, but the truths, it can be very empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Because knowledge is very helpful when it's applied, but it has to be the right knowledge.
the other question I had is, how involved are the kids yeah, depending on their age, of course, but I mean, how involved are they in the mediation, and what, how do you get involved with them in mediation? And how does that, at the same time, how does that compare to how a lawyer, that kind of scenario, would involve the kids? Is there a difference?
I think in most cases, when you get into, if you're talking about the legal side of it, children don't typically get brought in unless the judge does ask for a meeting with them to get their side of the story, or whatever they want to do as far as living with one parent or the other. It doesn't happen often.
Mhm.
I have only had a handful of times where children have been part of the process, and they have been older, a little bit older. And they were not acrimonious situations. They were more like family discussions where the parents actually wanted the children in the environment to express safely and comfortably their thoughts about what their lives should look like. So it's not part of what I do. It's
Okay.
not something that I encourage or discourage. It really depends on what does the family need, and also obviously what are the ages of the children. Is it really necessary? Most of the time in mediation, it isn't.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. Well, if what would be, I don't know if I want to say advice, because that may not be something you can necessarily give out, but what would you tell a couple that was at that stage where the thought process is there, that they're thinking towards that they're wanting to possibly go that direction? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that you need to take the time to interview, connect, gather your facts. I personally like it very much when people have spoken to attorneys and then they come and take advantage of one of my consultations, because it gives them a frame of reference
Okay.
between what that process looks like and what mediation looks like. And it's coming right from, separate sources. So I like when people understand their options, because then I feel like they're making very well-informed decisions.
Mhm.
That's the thing. I think it's about slowing down a little bit. I keep coming back to that, just want it over with. But when you're approaching this, you got to slow down. You have to think. You have to know what are the right steps. And you should have somebody that is unbiased. Family can be amazing support systems, but they're not always the best for advice on topics like this. So I always want to see people have someone that's unbiased that can be the snap out of it kind of person, or say, hey, you need to, you really need to go and investigate that more, or ask this question. Slow it down a little bit. It's a very short investment of time that can make the world of difference in what your life after divorce looks like. And whoever you work with, whether it's an attorney or a mediator, you have to feel like there's a connection. The person understands what your goals are. They respect what your goals are. They want to help you achieve them, but they're going to be able to help you do that in a way that not only conforms with what your state laws are, but it's going to give you what you need as an individual family or person when the whole process is over. And most importantly, keep the kids out of it. The kids should not be damaged in this process. That's
Yeah.
what the goal is.
Yeah, that to me would be the big thing for me, is that the kids, because I see it in my practice, even adults who have gone through it as a child, and how much it still affects them in their senior years, if they haven't worked through it and they went through a really terrible divorce, the parents that, so I understand that one. I get.
One thing that most people aren't familiar with, although it is becoming more mainstream now, is a term called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And ACEs are pretty powerful things for children. The what falls under the category of ACEs would be things like bullying, alcoholism of parents, drug addiction of parents, racism, divorce, any type of event that traumatizes a child. And divorce has, come onto that menu of things. And I think it's about time because, there's another part of divorce that is on the ugly side that also is rather controversial, and that's the topic of parental alienation. And parental alienation is real. I mean, it happens. I have a mother who has mental health issues. She alienated my daughter from me for a number of years. So that was grandparental alienation. But children who experience these types of traumas, whether it's one parent disparaging the other, whether the child is being forced to, have their allegiance to one parent over the other, whether one parent is being kept from the other parent, false allegations of abuse. These things leave a tremendous emotional footprint on children that can be everything from suicide to their own mental health issues, drug abuse, substance abuse, insecure attachments, failed relationships, suicide, like all of these things. And it starts off with one incident. And I think as a society, we have an obligation to our children to make sure that they have safety and love and protection, and they're allowed to love and be loved in a way that they all deserve. And that goes for the parents as well, because there are lots of struggling moms and dads out there that have been alienated from their kids, and it's a real uphill battle.
Sure.
And I think as a society, we have a new problem that we have to tackle. And I think we can do it, but it's going to take unity. It's going to take awareness. So I thank you both for the work that you're doing as far as, bringing to light healthy, focused parenting and relationships.
Right.
Well, we're trying anyway. Let's put it that way.
As we all are.
Yeah.
And we certainly want to include, as the divorce rates are rather high in this country, they're still parenting their children, and there's a whole nother factor at play here.
Well, and that can be done in a sensible, like you say, in a sensible way, and in a amenable way that nobody gets hurt by. Because divorce doesn't, it's we've put such a stigmatism to it.
Sure.
And I think that's what needs to change, because it's just two people realizing that they weren't really meant to be together and finding a way to be able to separate from that. So.
Right. And I mean, I'm thinking about the media and, portrayals of divorce on TV, and it's always dramatic. And I don't know that I've ever seen a situation on a TV show or a movie where they use a mediator. I mean, it's that message is not out there. It's more about us versus them and the battle and the fight, and there's a good guy and a bad guy. And so I think this needs to be brought to light. I don't know statistically how many people use mediators rather than going through the court systems. And
so Laura, you need to make a movie now about it. Take your book and make it into a movie.
So speaking to that statistical question that you had,
Sure.
I don't know what the exact numbers either, but I can tell you, which I find fascinating, what I've seen in my own practice, and it's very encouraging.
Okay.
So when I started in 2006, the majority of the clients that I saw were coming into mediation a little skeptical. It was kind of new. They were kind of getting used to the idea. Of those parents, I want to say about 25 or so percent of them, 20 to 25%, the placement of the children was always with mom. Dad got visitation. That's just how it was. Then I started through the years to see a little bit of a shift where dads were starting to come on board and they wanted more time. And I watched moms both embrace that and resist that. Let's fast forward to 2022.
Okay.
80 to 85% of the divorcing parents that I work with want shared parenting.
That's wonderful.
And it speaks to the shift. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We have moms now that have careers, they're working, they don't feel guilty about wanting to be out there and taking care of themselves and getting ahead and whatnot. And they also realize dads are important, which is great.
Mhm.
But through the dynamics of the family, where we're now 2-income families, it's almost like dads have evolved into the role of more changing diapers, more bath times, more dinners before bed. So as we're evolving as a society, it's become more of a norm.
Mhm.
So when I work with clients now, the minority are the ones coming in saying, well, no, the children will stay with mom, because dad's always just been in this role. It's the way their family worked.
Right.
And that's where there's a bit of a blind spot in the court system, and even perhaps with attorneys, many of whom may be doing these same responsibilities at home. But when you get in the courtroom, it's a little different, right?
Yeah.
But, we have to stop ignoring where society is going, because when we do that, we're turning a blind eye and we're changing the environment that these children have become accustomed to, what's normal for them.
Mhm.
And that's really a lot of what the work that even through the National Parents Organization, we're looking to do. It's about educating. It's about both parents. It's about quality of life. It's about recognizing the struggles and the strengths of what both parents bring to the table for their kids, and ensuring that that family just transitions. It doesn't become broken.
Well, that's
I
a good
like
way
that.
to put
I
that.
like
Yeah.
that transition. So I'm curious, I'm guessing you're licensed in Rhode Island, and if people are looking to find a mediator and they're in other states, or do you work with people outside of Rhode Island? How do people find a good mediator? What should they do?
So just to clarify, there is no licensing for
Okay.
mediators. So that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Yeah, on one hand, you want to know the people that you're working with are qualified and they know what they're doing. On the
Mhm.
other hand, you don't want to be overburdened with all kinds of rules and regulations that may not be a good fit. So certification is important, something more than a few hours in a mediation training course. The organization that I was a founding member of, the Academy of Professional Family Mediators, does have a referral site there. But I am nationally certified, so I can actually practice in any state.
Oh,
Ah.
okay.
And that's, I take it by Zoom then.
Have you done that worked with people outside of the immediate area?
I have, and I think one of the most interesting ones, just because of the logistics, was I had a spouse here on the East Coast, and her husband was in China.
Oh, wow.
But we made it work.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's great.
Yeah, you need virtual assets then to mediate that process when people are
Yeah.
literally in different spaces. And I imagine in some ways it could be more amicable initially if a couple, is physically not able to be in the same room together. That
Might make
Yeah.
it a little bit of, yeah. So-
Yeah, it can be helpful in some situations. Absolutely.
Well, Laurie, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm sure you could probably talk on it for a lot. So we're probably just hitting the tip of the iceberg with some of this information, but it's been great information, and
yes,
we really appreciate you being part of it.
yes. Is there any
I'm-
last thing you felt you wanted to say, or that things that we did not cover?
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to share, some hope, shed a little light in some dark corners. I think in parting, what I would stress to folks is, no matter where you are, there is always light. And if your divorce is a difficult one, and it's I've dealt with some of those where it's doesn't seem like there's any hope anywhere. There is always light at the end of the tunnel. Take your time, be thoughtful, but know there's a future there for you. When I was going through my own divorce and suffering through that 8 years and being a little angry with my counsel about the way things were handled, I had many dark moments. and a lot of days and nights that I felt like giving up. I couldn't do that, not just for my daughter, but for myself. And I think people need to understand that divorce is often traumatic and it's incredibly painful. And it does take time to recover from it. But the better you prepare for it, the more you get your head on straight, the more you reach out to good people that are going to give you good advice, the better that you will come through it. And don't forget the children.
Yeah.
Forget the children.
Again, thank you, Laurie. So
Yes, thank you so much, Laurie. We appreciate you being here. We've enjoyed this conversation. And that is our podcast for today. We hope that you have enjoyed it. We'd love to hear from you. Be sure to leave us a comment. And if you've liked what you've heard today, you can learn more about our parent coaching program or join us at a next workshop at focusedhealthyfamily.com. And we will share with you on the link more information to find out about Laurie Grover and working with a mediator, working with her. If that's something you need or someone that you know, you can pass that information on. And follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, on Instagram, Gina at Focused Healthy Family. And remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future.